Good morning. In Love and Gratitude, there's some questions. At the end of one of the later chapters on gratitude, Joel discusses the betrayal, doubting, and denial of the disciples and says, "Who cares?" I feel confused about this because don't we have to care if we are servants or instruments of the Lord? Well, in a way, but you don't have to care about the nothingness, this illusion. If people want to believe in it, they're free to believe in it, good and evil, you know. We aren't going to worry about it. It isn't true. We just have to worry about our own state of consciousness, not about everybody else's. And we have to, our state of consciousness, we have to know what the truth is. And we have to know it's the truth about these people who are doubting too. Of course we care, but they'll all wake up. That's what he said, and I don't think it's in Love and Gratitude. Isn't that in Nets? Leave your nets? Isn't that in that chapter where I don't know whether it's that or whether it's the Easter of Our Lives. It might be the Easter of Our Lives, that pamphlet. But I don't think it's in Love and Gratitude. I've got that one here, and I don't see it. It might be Easter. It's very familiar. I've read it many times. But no, you let people go their own way. They're free. They're free. Of course, you'd like to have them wake up and realize the truth. And that's why we're working. Of course we care, or we wouldn't be instruments for the awakening of the world. And that's what we are in this work. That's what we're supposed to be doing. But in the other sense, it's not, it's their problem. And the point he was making was, so Judas did what he did, but he would go on and awaken eventually. And it wasn't him, it's the impersonal belief that he accepted. So you see, you have to put it in context with everything else. Since my early connection with the Infinite Way, I've wished we had another word for the ultimate good. I've found it confusing to hear and read about good and evil in one breath, and then that God is only good. Well, it's true. Good and evil is a pair of opposites, and it's really would be more accurate if you called it better and worse instead of good and evil, because it's relative. The good is relative in the human state of consciousness in this world. The good is relative to the evil. It's better than that, but it's never all good without an opposite. That's what it is. It's better than the evil. And the evil, like that saying goes, there's so much good and so much evil in all of us. Well, on the human level, there certainly is. And nobody is all good and nobody is all evil. It's an impossibility because it's, like I said, it's a coin. It's got two sides to it. And it's really better and worse. It's all relative. But the ultimate good that God is is my peace or my kingdom. Or there's no opposite. It has no opposite. So it's total, complete good. There's no opposite to God. Good is all there is. Good is the reality. It's the difference between reality and an illusion. And the illusions are what this world is, a dream, an illusion, a concept. And it's back and forth. It's got two sides to it. It's a pair, which is two sides of the illusion, better or worse. But God, there has no opposite. Evil is not an opposite of God. Devil is not an opposite of God. You can't have a pair that aren't two of a kind. Good and evil are both, the pair of good and evil are the same thing. Two sides of the coin of illusion, not reality, the concept world, the dream world, the shadow world. They're not reality, they're not God. There's no law to support evil, no law to support good and evil. And any good that you have humanly has an opposite. Any sense of good, any appearance of good, and it's not permanent. It's an appearance, an illusion. It's not there, and there's no law holding it there. That's why it can swing back and forth between the two sides. It's one pair. It's a one, which has two sides to it. And the one thing that it is illusion, false sense, false belief. In a way, it'd be like 2 and 2. You could have 2 and 2 be 3, or you could have it be 5 in your illusion. And you might think it was better to have it be 5. Or you might think it was better, if it was a bill, to have it be 3. But it's all illusion. You can have it any way you see it. And none of it's true, and it doesn't make any difference. But God, that's a law. That's the reality, solid reality, even though it's not visible to the human sense. It does manifest as, and it does become tangible. And it's the only good, and that's true. There isn't any other good but God. The human sense of good isn't good at all. It's an illusion, and it has an opposite. Parent responsibility, will you please enlighten on it? Well, I suppose they mean, I don't know, I suppose they mean about in regard to teaching the spiritual principles to children. And if they're good enough for us to live by, they're certainly what we want our children to live by. And you can't live in a family with children and have two sets of values. You're teaching them by what you do, by what you say. You're teaching them by every move you make, and you can't be living spiritually and not have them pick it up too. And you certainly want to teach them what you believe is the truth. You don't, and the way to do that really is in their experiences, whether they're year or two old or whether they're in high school. They've got relationships with other people and other children, and you have to teach them the values that you believe in as you go along. You can't live by two sets. We don't try to push this onto anybody, and we don't go out and try to get all our relatives to read the books, but certainly minor children, it's our responsibility to teach them what we believe is the way to live. And when they're little, when they get grown up, they're going to go their own way, at least for a while. And then we don't bother them. But as long as they're children living at home, you give them your values and you help them work through their problems. They have as many problems to work through as adults do. Their relationships and their schoolwork and everything that comes into their life is just as important to them as ours is to us. And it's important that we help them turn within, that they certainly need to know there's God that they can turn to. And to start that when they're babies, meditating with them. And besides whatever you say, it's the way you deal with things that they pick up and learn from. They learn far more. As Joel said, he didn't see that going to Sunday school an hour a week was going to do much good. When they're in your home all the time, day and night, that's the opportunity to teach them about God and about the nature of appearances and about the nature of relationships, and that we solve our problems within ourselves. We meditate. We don't go out and try to do it all humanly, and we don't go out trying to do anything without turning within first. He has some things in the 56 letters at the ends of the chapters, sort of in the middle of the book, on to children, regarding teaching children the infinite way, and there's other books on it too. I've got one back there, Treasure Hunt. How do you get beyond the intellectual understanding of the principles to where it's rooted in your soul, where you begin to know God right? That's what we've been talking about this whole class, of course. You do it by meditation. That's the way. Many times I've thought to be guided by God, and when I look back, it was me. How do you distinguish between your own suggestions and that is truly God? Well, as you get more proficient at meditation, you know the difference when you haven't made the contact, or when you have, you can feel you can feel that presence, And that peace and the assurance, and you know you aren't going on your own, you have to, of course, you have to watch for a while that it isn't your ideas you're outlining, that your decision of what you want to do, and then saying that was God. It isn't. It isn't. You work up to it by building a consciousness of being willing to let God govern you, of letting go of as you let go of your human sense, of everything, material sense. You're open to that consciousness, and you really don't have any doubt when it's God that it's God. You don't have any doubt. If you're in doubt, then you can figure it's your mind doing it. If it's God, you'll know it's God. When you make that contact within, you do know it. And that's the only way. That's the only way that you attain that oneness. It's through meditation. If you don't know the difference between your intellectual, mental decisions and those of God, then you see it's because you aren't getting in there in meditation. You haven't yet made the contact or had the experience. It'll come. If you keep turning within, it will come. But it takes a while. Joel said it took him 2 years before he felt that presence. And then it was a while after that before he had the next experience of it. But as you turn within, listen for a few seconds, many times a day, you're opening your consciousness to it, you're preparing for it, and you also have to know the letter of truth. It's important, or we wouldn't bother with having the books if it weren't important. What the difficulty sometimes is that people go right on depending on the books for 25 years and instead of turning within. It's all just something I read, and I can quote it to you. But you see, if they've never experienced it, it isn't going to do them any good. It isn't going to make any difference in your experience unless you've made that contact within. And yet we need to know. How else would we know if we hadn't had it revealed to us through someone who received it from God? There it is. And the other part of this question is, what is the initiation Joel speaks of? Well, it's when you experience union with God, when you realize that you really are one with God, that there's one I. And then you are God guided. But that comes after you can make the contact, sometimes quite long after, and maybe not. It depends on the person and their readiness. This about the letter of truth, the writings. Part of this is out of the 59 Hollyco Special, 2 side 2. The revelation of the truth comes through one individual. That is, the truth is revealed. like it was revealed to Joel. And it was, of course, before that, revealed to Jesus and Moses and all these other illumined souls. But one individual cannot save the world. The revelation has to be taken up by those who are no longer followers. You start out being a follower of someone who's revealing the truth, but you can't go on being a follower forever. The revelator inspires us to go and do likewise, and we don't just follow, and we don't just read the books. We're supposed to go and do likewise. Turn within and receive our own realization from God. And in our turn be an inspiration to others, because there's got to be more than one, more than 10. 10 means perfection or wholeness. It can. Our function is not merely to receive this light and bring about a few healings, but to so live that our lives inspire others to go and do likewise. We aren't here just for our own benefit or our family. We're here in this work, receiving any light that we receive from within is for the rest of the world. And it starts out by our living it so that we're an inspiration to everyone who's receptive, that comes into our consciousness. And there will be some others, certainly, who are inspired by it to the extent that they go within too and are taught of God and live the truth. And it's that living it that does the work. It isn't any use to go out and tell the world a lot of words if they aren't going to hear it. It's that preparation which counts. So that we are taught from within. That's the goal of all the classes, all the books, is to get the students to turn within themselves and be taught of God. It isn't true for you till you experience it within your own consciousness. As long you can quote by the bookful, but it isn't true for you, and it isn't fruitage in your experience until it comes to you within, and then you know that's the truth. It isn't just something you've read and are quoting. You experience that light within you, and then there are healings. And that's what you do, of course, if you have some claim coming to you to be healed. You drop the patient, you drop the claim, and you make that contact within. And it's that realization of God with no reason, not going within in order to get a healing of something for somebody. We're going within because there's been an appearance of something that's not God, and we're turned within to make that contact, get that assurance. And when we have that realization, it manifests as harmony. It's the Word made flesh. Manifests in its own way, in its own time, and not necessarily according to our ideas of how it's going to come out. But we aren't ever, in the healing work, trying to heal another person. We're always trying to maintain our contact with God, our own. We aren't treating any person. We aren't treating any claim. All we're treating is ourself. It's our own state of consciousness that we're working with. And when we feel that presence or experience that light, that truth, then the darkness, whatever it was, whatever form it was, is dispelled. We have to know these principles. We have to know the basic principles of the letter of truth, which is the nature of God, the nature of error, and the nature of prayer. That's basic. And you learn that. You learn it by studying. You could, of course, never read a book and wait for it to come to you within. But it's easier, since we've had it revealed and have it in print. It's certainly much easier to study it and then take each point or part into our meditation and give light on it. So it opens up for us and we realize what it means, and that it means a lot more than just to the human's mind, that's human state of consciousness that reads it at first. The human mind doesn't and can't understand truth, and it doesn't get it all the way. But sometimes it'll be 10 or 20 years before something dawns on you that you've been believing you knew about all this time, and there'll be some light come through on it. It changes everything. But not everything takes that long. Every time you meditate, it comes closer, even though you don't see it right at that time. It's opening up in your consciousness. Some things you see right away, and other things, it can be years before that particular thing is revealed, unfolded to you. And it's so important to know what the nature of God is. We can't know God with the mind, but we can know a lot about God, and we can know a lot about what God isn't, which helps a great deal in our meditation. A spiritual healer must have a sufficient understanding of the nature of God to be able to relinquish or let loose of his old concept of prayer. We read that in a book, for instance. You can't go to God and ask God for things. And so you accept it and you start doing it. You start trying to pray without asking God. To do this or that. And the reason for that, of course, is that God has already created this universe, already given us everything there is, and it's already perfect. And by knowing what intellectually what the nature of error is and its appearance, and not the truth, you begin to be able to let go of these old beliefs, these old concepts that you've been conditioned to accept all your life. And that's what it's all about. The letter of truth teaches us how to look at it, how to let go, how to release the ideas that we've had about God and about mankind and about the world, to let go of these old teachings that we've been trained in, conditioned in, so that we are no longer working or desiring to change people or reform them or improve our humanhood. We turn that all around, and we do it because we've read it. It's been revealed to someone. And so we read it, and then we make that effort and try to change our way of looking at things. Try to see that there's no evil person. And this all takes practice. And the practice is what builds your consciousness of it. You read what a principle is, and then you accept that as that seems true and must be true, and therefore I'll try it out. And you go and apply it to everything all day in your life, everything you come up against. You're no longer attempting to influence God in anyone's behalf, nor to go and to have God go and wipe out your enemies. Because you're accepting it that there aren't any. Every person who is doing evil is really a victim of evil. They don't know any better, they wouldn't be doing it. It's the only way they've figured out to get whatever it is they want. And we have to unlearn all these things that we've grown up with and been conditioned into. Evil isn't a power, because God is the only power. When you know that God is the only power and you accept that, then you gradually, you can't do it all at once, you gradually withdraw power. You don't give power anymore. You don't see these appearances of evil as something that can hurt you or that can have an effect on you in some way. You begin to practice it. And you begin to see they really don't have power. And they just disappear. And enough of it disappears in the beginning when you're just starting. It almost seems as though there's more, as though it's easier and quicker at first. Then after a while there's a period when it gets a little tougher. You have to go deeper then. And you have to do more meditation and more practicing. But you see, you don't ever just read books. You've got to take everything you read. That's why you read a little at a time. You don't just sit and read the whole book and, oh, now I've got that, whatever the name of it is. You have to take it one point at a time and go out and practice it in your daily life. And that's what builds the consciousness of it. You see that God really is the only power. An understanding of these principles enables us to withdraw from the battle, so we don't fight evil anymore, thereby obeying Jesus' great teaching, resist not evil. And of course, that's Sermon on the Mount is as good a place to start as any I know of. It's all there. These are the principles that we start to live by. You used to have to do it this way. Now I say unto you, this is how you do it. And there it is. Every one of them. And that's what you start practicing. And you keep practicing it. It opens up. And this consciousness that you've attained through practice and through pondering it and through meditation, it becomes flesh. It manifests out here in the outer. But it's consciousness that's doing it. And at first you may think it's God, some God up on a cloud doing these things. As you keep working with it, you see that it's your consciousness, which is God. But that you're learning that about God too, that God is your consciousness. God isn't a person. God is your own consciousness. And you have no capacities except God capacities and qualities. And you have all of those. And you begin to recognize it, that you really do, and that you can use those capacities that you have. And you don't have to resist evil. You don't have to reform anybody or change anybody or get something done to them to change them. You just have to know the truth. And it's as you work with this that you see you're having your own class all the time, going right on all the time. Every time you're practicing the principles and seeing, being open to it, to being taught from within, to feel that presence and that assurance, that light. And you see it dispelling the darkness, and that's what it is. You're being taught from within. And you change what you used to believe was a power. It isn't you see that it isn't a power at all. But it's the meditation, the turning within, and being open and receptive. And then even when you're reading something in a book, it doesn't mean you can't read the letter of truth anymore. Sometimes just reading, it'll come to you. A great experience, a deep experience can come, but it isn't coming from the book. And if you have a God experience in a class, it isn't coming from the teacher, it's coming from God within you. That's where it's coming from, your own consciousness. And it's because you're tuned in, you're open to it, and you're prepared. You can have a very deep, enlightening experience reading a book that you've read a dozen times before. Doesn't matter. It's what's going on in your consciousness, not what's happening out here. And it all takes place, all the activity there is takes place in consciousness. Same as the healing does. There's something in the so-called patient that has to be receptive, receive the healing, or it doesn't come. It's a change of consciousness, and there was something in him that accepted it. And sometimes people are healed, like that man who had something, I don't know what cancer or something he had. And we've mentioned that so many times, but it's a good example. He got the healing, total healing, and he went home from the hospital and fell off the roof and killed himself anyway. Because it wasn't him. It wasn't him who, it wasn't his consciousness that was opened. But somebody else could have a very minor healing, seemingly, but it could be a very big opening of consciousness, and they'd be awake and on the path from then on. It's all takes place in your consciousness, and nobody else can take any credit for it. It's got to come through an individual, and the revelations can come through, but you have to receive them, you have to be open to it, and in order to be receptive and open to it, you have to keep working with the letter of truth and meditating, preparing yourself. But you have to work with the letter of truth, because otherwise it's all in the Sermon on the Mount, but the books elaborate on it. It's really all in there, every principle. Resist not evil. Well, then there's a chapter in every book that explains, or at least a section, explains what it means by resist not evil. So you're better able to practice it and try not resisting evil. You experiment with it. That's partly what practicing is. You're checking it out. If the way doesn't supply the wayfarer, it's no way to fare upon. You have to see that it's bringing fruitage into your life, or you may be in a teaching that isn't helping you. But if you're turning to God within for guidance, you'll be guided into one which is for you. So we get a great deal of help from the truth that's been revealed, or it's at least an opportunity to have help, but we have to accept it, and we have to practice it and attain that realization ourselves. And we have to practice the healing work. Every so-called healing work, because actually there isn't anything real to be healed. It isn't in the body, it's a belief, an image in the mind that there's some discord. So every time you see any temptation to believe that there's a person who's sick or sinning or lacking, a person or a condition in the world, this is all healing work that you need to do. This is an opportunity for you to find out what those principles are. That's the first thing. What's the truth here? This is God. And if this is God that I'm seeing here in this picture, then what is this truth? God is the truth. And you see, you ponder it, contemplative meditation, and then you get to the point where you go within and be still. And whether there's any apparent change in the outer or not, every time you do that, you're developing your own consciousness, and that's what the healing work does. We aren't trying to make the world humanly a better place. We're trying to develop our consciousness to where we're seeing spiritually, realizing our oneness with God, and eventually union with God. But we've got all these things to practice on that bring us to that place where we can realize the oneness. And comes down to being the healing principle and the supplying principle, and it's the principle of all our relationships. Realizing, attaining that realization of our permanent identity, who we are and who we'll always be and always have been, and what that is, what the qualities are, what it means. And we work with it, and we see as we go along working with it that it's true about everybody. This is their identity, the identity of every person in the world, no matter how good or evil they may be. Spiritual identity is the truth about every individual. And as we see that, it breaks down, at least to some degree, their belief in their human identity, in their humanhood. It's all the blessings that come to us are for the world. They aren't just for us. And we have all the world full of appearances to practice on. Practice, because wherever the appearance is, God is there. There's nothing else. There's only God. And that's what we have to practice seeing. The presence of God, no matter how it looks or sounds or smells or feels, we have to, through our inner work and our study, bring ourselves to see that it really is God there. thank you, and I thank you for coming. It's been a beautiful experience for me. So grateful to all of you. Thank you.